Hey, what's going on, everybody? Daniel Richardson here, and yeah, this is the very first episode of the main event. And of course, we're going to tackle Wrestlemania, the greatest wrestling event of all time. Well, maybe that's a little much, but we're going back to, it was March 31st, 1985, Madison Square Garden, New York City, New York. And of course, we know the main event. It was Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff going up against Mr. T and Hulk Hogan. My God. Now, the one thing I noticed that a lot of people kind of complain about, is that when it comes to that first WrestleMania, it's a minor complaint, but everybody seems to have it, is, well, I don't really feel like a WrestleMania. The world title wasn't on the line. This is the one WrestleMania that didn't have the world title on the line. It's a small complaint. You gotta remember, even though this was, and it was billed as the greatest wrestling event of all time, it had all the celebrities, the spectacle of it all. It still wasn't really WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Like, that didn't quite break through. I mean, even though I think 2 was, even better, it didn't really break through until 3, I think. So, this is a testing ground is what it was. It was just, he said in numerous interviews, Vince, this was just like a gamble. He gambled it all right here. And it was just a supercard, more than anything else. It was just, boom, showcasing what he got. So I don't really complain too much the fact that it's not a world title main event. I got over that pretty quickly. But let's look at the background of this, big main event first. You got the cornermen on both sides. On the Piper Orndorff side, you got Cowboy Bob Orton. And of course, on the T Hogan side, you got Superfly Jimmy Snuka. And you can trace this, the roots to this feud, back to even on that special, infamous episode of Piper's Pit when Piper took the coconut and just smashed it right over Snuka's skull. And of course, at that point, he realized, he's going to keep running his mouth. He's going to keep, doing shit like that. So he better get, a little muscle, a little bit of a backup there. So he hired a bodyguard. And that bodyguard was Ace, Cowboy Bob Orton. So, and sure enough, time went on. He kept running his mouth. Of course, he was running down the whole rock and wrestling connection, and of course running down Hulk Hogan as well. And that would lead to, I believe it was the war to settle the score. I know they had 2 of them that was on there, like the brawl that ended all. I think it's the war to settle the score, though, that they fought for the world title. And ended disqualification after Paul Orndorff interfered. And of course, Mr. T jumped in. So it just kind of all led to WrestleMania. Now, another thing, too, is, when you think of WrestleMania, you think of the spectacle. Like, don't get me wrong, I mean, it should be more about the wrestling, but this is like the one event where they're like, well, it's wrestling, but it's also, look at all the lights and the best word for it is spectacle, the show of it, And, this was Vince trying to merge wrestling into the mainstream. And, of course, he had a slew of celebrities, not just Mr. T, but, he had Billy Martin as the special guest ring announcer, had Liberace as the timekeeper, and, of course, he had Muhammad Ali as the outside referee, or we'd call him the, outside enforcer today. But, yeah, I mean, like I said, he had all this stuff. And the thing was, he was really trying to push this as more than just a wrestling event, and trying to get, a bigger market, not just the wrestling fans, but, trying to get, that crossover appeal with Mr. T. And I could be wrong, and, if I am, please let me know down below. But I think this is one of the first few times, maybe not the first, but easily, one of the first few times that they actually had, they actually kind of did like the media circuit. You had Hogan and Mr. T on Saturday Night Live, and they did all the talk shows and everything. Which there's an awesome. If you haven't seen this, you gotta check it out on YouTube. But there's they did a show. Was it called Hot Properties? It had that Richard Belzer guy where Hogan put him in a front chin lock, and just that was it. Like, dude passed out. Cause I mean, he was running his mouth about wrestling. He was just like, it's all phony baloney and everything like that. And Hogan fucking cinched up on him. It ended in the lawsuit, which was pretty awesome. But fuck it, that's what you get. But he ends up passing out, and then back of his head's all busted up and shit. You get a chance to check that out. It's just great. But no, it was all setting the stage, like I said, for this monumental event. WrestleMania. As for the match itself, I will say one thing. I grew up watching it. This is, as a kid, I watched a ton of, well, I can't really say all wrestling. I watched WWF mostly, but I had a ton of, old WWF VHSs, and this was one of them. And I didn't notice it then, and it wasn't until I just kind of recently rewatched it that I couldn't believe how over Mr. T was. Like, dude, the place erupted. And when he's in the ring, you can hear T, 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 and you're like, wow. Like, Roman Reigns wishes he had that kind of a reaction. Dude, he speared Stephanie McMahon in the PG era. Like a man spearing a woman. And it didn't get half the reaction that Mr. T got, just for being Mr. T, Now, that's one thing you do hear a lot about. Because, I'm not going to lie, is T a good wrestler? No, not really, but it worked for this man. Like, a lot of people who will complain, they'll be like, well, Mr. T was kind of slowing it all down or whatever. But the thing is, it felt real watching him in the match. You see when celebrities get in there, and of course, I'm not expecting them to be, top notch. Obviously not. So, yeah, but they're taught, like, the basics, hip toss and, arm bars and headlocks, shit like that. But it's like, they shouldn't, realistically, they shouldn't even get close enough to a veteran wrestler to do that. Like, I don't care how, even if the wrestler's going to sell for him or whatever, it still shouldn't happen. I don't care what Hollywood actor's like, I'm going to go in there and just throw in an armbar. It just, I hate to go to it, but Jay Leno getting Hogan in a headlock, I'm like, fuck off. Like, that was retarded. When I see Dennis Rodman, he had DVD, that Rodman Down Under, when he fought Kurt Hennig, same thing. I'm like, he's an athlete for sure, but it's just like, this guy, you're fighting a wrestler. So, whenever you see a celebrity in there and he throws a headlock on somebody, he's holding them in there for a minute, it's like, no, not happening at all. Like, look, the best example is, Andy Kaufman. He didn't dominate shit with Jerry Lawler. Like, Lawler fucked his world up, as he should have. With T's a bigger guy. And he had an amateur wrestling background. And, of course, he was like a bodyguard on top of being like an actor and everything. So, when he got in the ring, that's all he did was just old school, amateur, collegiate wrestling kind of stuff, and kicks and headbutts. That was it, but it felt real. I felt no, that's what you would do in a situation. You wouldn't just go in there and just start superplexing everybody and power. No, you wouldn't. You would just you're in there to fight. It's your thing. So I don't know. I think for what it was, he did a really good job. And not just that, but you can tell he wasn't quite as conditioned as the other ones. Like, he was out of breath so quickly, got gassed out. And of course, but he wasn't in that much. A lot of time, it was a big brawl half the time. But then, of course, for the most part, it was Hogan carrying the match. Wow, never thought I'd say that. The match itself, it's chaotic. I know a lot of people especially pure wrestling fans, they want to trash it and shit. But for what it was, I thought it was really good. I remember being a kid, and then once again, I get it now. So this ain't even a criticism. This is just an observation, if you will. But I just remember as a kid, because I took it. It was real to me. I took it very seriously, and I just remember watching matches and watching the officiating a lot of times. I couldn't believe wrestlers would get away with shit. And in this match in particular, I just remember the officiating was horrible. On all accounts. There's at one point they're double teaming T in the corner, and I just remember Patterson's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he just stops at 4. He's like, "Come on, guys, seriously, break it up." I'm like, "Whoa, where's the 5 at?" You should disqualify both these fuckers, and that's it. Match over. Now, I realize now you couldn't do that. I get it, but at the time, as a kid, when it's real, I was just like, "How are they getting away with this double team?" At one point, Piper uses a chair on Hogan, in full view of both referees, not just Patterson, but Muhammad Ali outside. I'm like, really? Did anybody explain to Muhammad Ali that this is, it's fake? He was really getting into it. He got into that role really good. Every time a brawl would break out, dude, he'd jump in the ring. And he'd taking swings at people and everything. And you can just see Patterson trying to restrain him at times. And a few times you can even see him kind of whisper to him. And he's just like, dude, you guys, you gotta get back outside, stay out there for a minute. You gotta let these guys do their thing, But, he was gung-ho for sure. He was game, and I like that. But yeah, like I said, the match itself really good. The ending came when that horrible officiating, Patterson's distracted by, Mr. T and Piper fighting in the corner. And, of course, Orndorff has Hogan held. And Orton comes off the top of the cast. However, Hogan moves out of the way, boom, Orton eats the cast, and then, Orndorff eats the cast. Snuka intercepts Orton, and Hogan gets the win, pins him. If you would have asked me when I was a kid how that match ended, I would have said the exact same thing, except I would have said, he gets intercepted, and then Hogan hits a leg drop and pins it. I forgot he doesn't hit a leg drop, and I'm thinking like, oh wow, like the first WrestleMania, the first main event ends with a screwy kind of finish there. It's a tainted victory for Hogan and T. But it is what it is. It's good stuff. Of course, Piper gets pissed at the end, knocks out Patterson, and then him and Orton leaving Orndorff in the ring. Of course, Orndorff comes through, sees he's abandoned, kind of freaks out a little bit, and he gets out. That would signal his eventual face turn later on down the road. Yeah, and so like I said, now that's pretty much the end of the match right there. The fallout from this match. I know Hogan and Piper, they continued their feud. It would continue on into the Wrestling Classic, which was the next pay-per-view in November. And that match ended in disqualification, if I remember correctly. Orton interjected and interfered in that match. And of course, Paul Orndorff did get he attempted to get a little bit of revenge because he was actually in the Wrestling Classic, and his first opponent was Cowboy Bob Orton. Ended disqualification as well because I think if I remember correctly, Orton used the cast like in full view of the referee, so it was just disqualification. And then of course Mr. T kind of became the resident WWF boxer, and I remember he took on Orton at one point, defeated him, but then of course after the match, Orton and Piper beat down Mr. T, which would eventually lead up to the boxing match at WrestleMania 2 between Piper and Mr. T, which would end, big surprise, DQ as well. I didn't think Piper and Orton was involved when it seemed to end in a DQ, it seemed like. Except for this match, obviously. But no, I was that right there. My overall thoughts on the actual match, I liked it. Now, once again, I could be biased. In fact, no, I am biased. Once again, I grew up, this is one of my favorites. And like I said, really, anything from like 94 back, I watched almost religiously. And then 95-ish some, but it seemed like around 96 I didn't quite rent as much. That's what we do. Don't tell the authorities, but we would rent the VHSs, and my uncle would tape them off for me. So I had a fucking library full of like, old school, WWF pay-per-views. So I mean, I watch these things like all the time. This was also one of my favorites right here. I just love the sportsmanship, it feels like a real sporting event. I have a buddy of mine who doesn't like the early WWF pay-per-views because he's definitely more of a sports entertainment guy, and he likes that big stage, the big grand stage, and the massive Titantron, and whatever, cute decorations they have up. And I prefer, like, this look, of, a dark, the darkened out crowd. Really no entranceway except for like a little tunnel they come out over or whatever. Just slip behind the curtain and get in there. Because I mean, it focuses on the wrestling, and that's kind of surprising for a match like this. Literally, people want to rip on Hogan like he's not the best wrestler, but he was entertaining. He was for its time it worked. I mean, Hulkamania, you can't deny Hulkamania was not running wild right now. It was doing great. It was definitely running wild. Mr. T did his thing, and the rest of them did good as well. Also, consider the fact that that no one really liked Mr. T. Piper and Orndorff, they said multiple times that they just wanted to break it during the match and just say fuck it and start beating him up, but they they didn't. They stay professional and everything. But you got to think for Mr. T, that's got to be a lot of pressure because there's no way he didn't know. He obviously probably sensed like these two guys don't like me. He's in front of a huge crowd, like I said, over 19,000 fans. At Madison Square Garden. And not only that, I mean, you're headlining WrestleMania. Now, once again, I know it wasn't quite WrestleMania then, but still, you're headlining like the first big event. So, I mean, yeah, I guarantee it. So for all that, resting on your shoulders, and then you can still go out there and perform pretty good. Hey, kudos. So yeah, overall, like I said, it is for pure wrestling fans, they're not gonna like it. It is a bit of a circus match. I mean, it's chaos. It's it's not not a whole lot of technical holes or anything. But I really enjoy it. It really is one of my favorites. So I thought about doing like a ranking system, or a rating system when I do these main events, and I decided against it because if there is like that one asshole out there who's just like, wait a minute, you said that this was 3 stars, but you also how are you putting them on the set? I don't want to deal with it. But I'm just saying overall, liked it, really liked it. So what did you guys think about this main event? let me know in the comments below. You know, do you have any memories? You know, maybe because I was too young. I was born in 1985, so like I have no recollection of this being live or the build up to it. You know, all my is through like VHS tapes, and then of course reading about the history and watching different shoot interviews. As time went on. So maybe you guys actually remember the build up to this. Either way, let me know down below what you thought about this match. Love it or hate it. Either way, let me know. Guys, tune in next week as we cover the main event for the Wrestling Classic. Ooh, goosebumps. So guys, share and subscribe if you haven't already. Show this video some thumb and love. And of course, follow me over on Twitter at WCPW Review Guy 1. That's all I got, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, until next time.